Well, hey, everybody. Time for episode 164 of Mike in the Midwest. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Mike in the Midwest, episode number 164 here from the beautiful BOGP Studios in St. Peters, Missouri on Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. Hope everybody is doing great. This is our mini podcast for our amazing patrons just like you, and hope you are doing well here as we transition into the fall season here in the United States. Well, before we get started today, of course, you can find me on the socials at BRGuestMike. Would love to connect with you if we have not done that before. So please find me on Instagram, Twitter, or Threads. That'd be a great place to find me. And I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here and allowing us to put out the Be Our Guest podcast more than just once a week and to keep the archives up. Over 2,400 episodes there for you to check out. If you're new to the show, you can go back and listen to shows all the way back to 2008, where things were a lot different. That was way before magic bands were even a sparkle in our eye. Tron was not even thought of. A lot of the resorts, Riviera, not even thought of. Just think about that. Go back and listen to some of those shows because it's funny to think about, to hear what we were talking about back then, because that stuff is a little wild. Remember Illuminations? Remember Extra Magic Hours, Magical Express, all that good stuff? Yeah, it's kind of fun to go back in time some days. So check that out. We can only keep that up because of your support. So thank you. I love doing the show. Hope you always enjoy listening to the shows because I sure love putting them out. And we can only do it with your support. So thank you so much for that. And also with thank yous, we had an amazing weekend this past weekend down at Give Kids the World. We went down quickly over the weekend. Pam, Scott, Ricky, and myself. Wow. They were such great hosts to us. Stephen Amos and the folks at Give Kids the World allowed us to do that show on Saturday afternoon from noon to 6. We got a great location there in the village, right off the dining hall there that is sponsored by Perkins Restaurants. And you guys, especially, I know a lot of our patrons here that are listening to this show stepped up in a big way, donated money to the Wish families, bid on auction items, put in raffle tickets for the trip to Walt Disney World. Saying thank you just truly is not enough. I mean, those words are so, we say them every day so many times. You say thank you to a server at Taco Bell. You say thank you to somebody who opens the door for you, and that's what we do as a society. But seriously, when you get down there, it is tangible the difference that those funds make to these families. You see dads and moms having such a good time with their kids that probably a week before they were somewhere else in the world, sitting in a hospital room, stressing. And, they're probably going to have to go back to that once they leave the village. But for that day, for that hour, they're having breakfast at the village with their kids. And they're talking about, today we're going to go to the Magic Kingdom and we're going to meet Cinderella. And that little girl's in her Cinderella dress. The boys dress like a pirate, or whatever they are. They're a regular family and they're celebrating like a lot of us do. And a lot of us are blessed where we don't have to think about the hospital rooms and the doctors and the treatments. And it was such a blessing. I got to serve eggs. I got to serve breakfast bowls, mostly eggs. And we had like a toppings bar. So I was putting bacon bits and sausage, little sausage crumbles and mushrooms and green peppers, whatever people asked for, I would put it on their breakfast bowl there. And it was just neat to interact with folks. I'd always ask them, where are you from? Where are you going to go today? And some people were going to Universal. I said, make sure you tell ET I said, hello, my name's Mike. And they're like, oh man, they have an ET. And it was fun because like some of the people didn't know they had an ET ride there. So, you got to tell them kind of what you might, expect when you went to the park, and they're excited. And it was so fun because they were getting to worry about what they were going to do on vacation rather than what the next medication was going to be, what the next treatment was going to be. And you could see that, the child there that was having the health issues, you know, was there, but that child was just a regular kid that day. And I love that. And and I'm seeing it from a dad's perspective, right? Dad wasn't Dad was just going to worry about getting the family over to Universal or to Epcot, or I think one was going to the studios. That's all he was worried about. And that's what dads should be worried about. Moms, sisters, and brothers, that sometimes you don't think about this, but siblings sometimes are kind of robbed of the normal sibling experience, right? Because most siblings just hang out all the time and they're in the same house. They ride around in the car together all the time. But these siblings sometimes don't get to see their brothers or sisters because they're in the hospital. And they don't get to see mom or dad because mom or dad are with the child who's having the illness. But these families are together. So your money that you donated is allowing these families to be families. So thank you. I wish you could go there. Please, please go there sometime and volunteer, because you did so much good. You filled my heart because of how kind you were with your donation. So thank you for that this past weekend. It was awesome. So everything else going on around here. Again, I said this during the live show on Saturday, and you'll hear, I'm going to chop it. What I'm going to do is, we recorded all 6 hours is one big file. I'm going to chop that up and put out the 6 hours on the feed throughout the next couple of months. You'll get hour one actually this Thursday, because we obviously didn't do a live show Sunday night because we did 6 hours on Saturday. So hour one is going to come out Thursday on the feed. So you can check that out. The audio's not perfect on the first hour. It gets better after the first like half hour, because we got the levels right after that. I went back in and post and kind of try to fix it. So please bear with me on that, but I tried to fix it up. But yeah, so you'll get to hear that on Thursday. But we had all kinds of fun. We did some listener questions. We talked all about the D23 announcements and all that good stuff. So you get to hear the show this coming Thursday, the first hour of the 6 hour live show. So we got that for you coming up. Let's see what else. Not much else going on around here. My football team, Howell, had another Hail Mary, beat us on the last play of the game Friday night. Yes. And I was actually meeting a couple of listeners from South Bend, Indiana, as this was happening, as our team fumbled the football away, and then the other team threw a Hail Mary to beat us. So I apologize, Emily from South Bend, and your husband. You guys are awesome, but I was in a little bit of a foul mood, so I apologize for that. It was rough. But yeah, the terrible timing there. But yeah, it was great. So let's talk about last week. We got some feedback last week about school supplies back in the day. Hopefully your kids are having a great start to the school year. If you're having if you have kids and they're going back to school and everybody's back in a routine now, hopefully by now, everybody's kind of getting into the going to bed routine and getting up in the morning. I know it's never easy, but once you get into a routine, it does get easier. So John Luther, my good friend, says, Trapper Keepers, I remember getting my first one, which was a solid red. I recall only getting a new backpack every other year. Smart. I was really good about taking care of my things, and there usually wasn't a need to replace them too quickly. I do remember the lunchbox and thermos combination, but I can't recall for sure what I had on mine. If I had to guess, it was certainly the Empire Strikes Back for one of those years. It's sort of sad to think that at a certain point, we went over to the brown bags instead. Once we got to junior high, the lunchboxes just weren't as cool anymore, at least amongst my group. I think that is a good point. Once you got to junior high, you didn't really want to carry a lunchbox. You just had to brown bag it. And it's sad because it's peer pressure. Junior high, because I thought right, I'm going to talk about this here as the main topic in just a second. I was a sixth grade teacher for years and years. But man, peer pressure is a real thing, especially middle school. But yeah, you just had to bring a brown bag. I mean, brown bags are practical, right? Because when you're done, you just chuck them. You don't have to worry about taking them home or forgetting them in your locker. There's some practicality about that. But man, those metal lunch boxes were the coolest things because they almost told a story. They had like panels, front and back and sides. And it was almost like a comic book because they had like scenes from the movie or the TV show. I think that's why they're art, basically. They're collectibles at this point. And, I listened to that show called You Don't Know Flack about Rob O'Hara down in Oklahoma. And he has a whole collection of metal lunchboxes that he has in his studio behind him on his shelves. And I'm so jealous of his lunchboxes. They're so awesome. Steve, my good friend here on Patreon. Thank you for being here. He says, I had the Empire Strikes Back lunchbox along with Happy Days Fonz. However, the NFL helmet lunchbox from the 70s was the best. Yes, it had my football Cardinals. Seattle was in the NFC before they went to the AFC, and the Bucks in the AFC. We would draw the helmets all day long in second grade. We never could get the Saints logo correct. The NFL pencils and Garfield pencil toppers were also a must in the 80s. Absolutely. You would get the pencil set for the NFL that had set just said like St. Louis Cardinals, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, New Orleans. Yes, and it would be the team colors. I had that pencil set. Oh my God, Steve, this is I love this nostalgia hit. This is why I love this show. Let's see. Back to Steve. Don't get me started on the greatness of the gumball machine helmets. Yes, those little helmets you get in the little plastic domes. Yes. Trapper Keepers were the best, but the Smurfs came on a similar product called the Organizer. My wife just bought a Trapper Keeper, never uses it, but we both love having it around like an old friend. See, I want to buy one, but I have nothing that is not digital. I use nothing that is paper in this studio. What would I put in it? Absolutely nothing. What would it do? Get in the way. Am I probably going to buy one? Yes. And I'd probably just go with the Velcro because I loved my Trapper Keeper. I love that your wife bought one. And I got to check out that organizer. I'm going to have to Google that after the show. So if you had an organizer, let us know. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast. All right. Michael Corbett, my good friend out in Utah, says, after my first year of college and after serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I spent one summer back at home. My dad had bought a 2964 Mustang for my brother, but it was a stick. My brother just could not get the hang of it, so I got to take it back to college. It was not super reliable in the winters of Utah, but it made me so cool at BYU. Mallory just needs to learn. Exactly. I know. The thing is, when you're young and you're driving a stick, it's never pretty. Like sometimes you'll kill it because you won't do the clutch just right. So you kill it at a stoplight or something, especially on a hill. Man, when you get a red light on a hill, that's trouble. But the good news is the new vehicles have this kind of built-in technology where it won't roll backwards. Now, when I learned, you didn't have this. You would have to real quick like hit the gas and like almost like lay a scratch because you didn't want to back it like roll back into the car behind you. But now, like my Jeep and the Jeep I had before this one, they have this thing where it will not allow it to roll back. It's like a safety feature, which I really don't like. But you don't have to worry about that. So it's even easier to drive a stick now. But yeah, so man, a Mustang at BYU, Michael, rolling. And he continues, Pee-wee folders are what I remember the most. Yellow with sports figures on them. They were cool back in the day. Or PC folders, he says. Okay, maybe not Pee-wee, PC folders. Thanks, Michael. Len, my good friend out in Maryland, says, being a peanut butter fan like you, asking me to pick up a favorite Reese's candy is like asking me to pick a favorite child. My eyes are very well tuned to the Reese's orange color. If I see that color in a store, I always turn my head to check out what it is. A little Len in the mid-Atlantic. We live about I see it's his show. Len in the mid-Atlantic. We live about 2 hours from Hershey, Pennsylvania, the birthplace of Hershey. They have a very nice amusement park there called, surprisingly, Hershey Park. We have been many times. Being a science and math person, my most important school supply was my calculator. I started with a red LED display 4-banger calculator that could only add, subtract, multiply, and divide. I really moved up in the world when I got my HP 12C. It was really powerful for that era, but you had to learn how to enter the equations using the reverse Polish notation method. When my kids went to school, they were required to use a monster calculator, the TI-83, that could do some minor calculus, matrix math, and graphing. Just as a side note, I love to freeze my Reese's peanut butter cups. Yes, hang on. Bell, frozen Reese's peanut butter cups, 100% taste better. 100%. Len is correct. Yes. I don't know why they taste better. Yes. You got to freeze your peanut butter cups. Okay. Back to the TI-83 thing. That was still a thing. And I don't even know if it is with Mallory. I think it still is. But I know it was true of Paige. that she had to have that stupid TI-83 scientific calculator. And as I recall, that thing is like $150. I think she even had to have it at Mizzou. It was like a course requirement. And the thing I couldn't understand was, is there not an app that you can download that would do those same calculations for like $1.99? That has got to be a racket, like some kind of a, like Texas Instrument has a stranglehold on some kind of like a monopoly, because there's no reason that those calculations couldn't be done on a smartphone in an app for like $2. There, that's got to be some kind of a racket to have to purchase that calculator. Let me know. Patreon.com/BRGuestPodcast. See, next up, we have Michelle, my good friend down in South Florida. Congrats on the successful live show yesterday at Give Kids the World. I hope there'll be more group volunteer opportunities in the future. There absolutely are going to be, because we loved it. We had so much fun. We are definitely doing this more. I'm a metal lunchbox collector. Oh, look at this. I want to be. My wife would kill me. I don't have many, but I love what I have, including Pete's Dragon, Annie, Magic Kingdom. I didn't even know there was a Magic Kingdom. Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. And Holly Hobby. My husband actually has his original NFL lunchbox that his mom saved from childhood. Oh, I would love to have an NFL lunchbox from like the 70s or 80s, because we had a football team in St. Louis, the Cardinals. That was my team, not the Rams, the Cardinals. I think my favorite Reese's is the pumpkin. I do like the small ones, but it's a lot of work to open each one. Haha. But what it does, it slows you down and it makes it more enjoyable. I still think the small ones are the best, but the pumpkins, okay. I forgot there are pumpkins. The Easter eggs are pretty good too. Thanks, Michelle. And I didn't know you collected those metal lunch boxes. I love it. I'd love to see pictures. Trisha up in Wisconsin. It was a big deal getting a graphing calculator. And I want to meet one person who didn't actually poke themselves with a geometry compass. Oh my God. I taught sixth grade. That's all my kids did. And I taught gifted. That was even worse. Gifted kids poke everybody with stuff. Unbelievable. Like, I don't know why, but like the higher your IQ, the more you got to poke people. I swear. It's crazy. She continues. Those suckers were sharp, especially when you were digging in your pencil pouch and not expecting to be stabbed. By the way, they made new kinds of compasses eventually, that they were just like round discs. And they no longer use the kind where you put the little half pencil like you got at mini golf and like the pointy thing on the other side. They were just like a round circle disc that had a kind of a ball bearing in the center, and they had like little slots for where you put your pencil tip, and that's how you'd use the compass. There was no pointy thing on them anymore. Boring. But yeah, I do remember the old kind. Anyway, back to Trisha. Have to share my reviews of the Milwaukee Beverage Tours. Spreechers, best known for their fire-roasted root beer sweetened with honey, was great. Free beer samples and unlimited soda. Also toured a local coffee roaster, Stone Creek. I'm not much of a coffee drinker, but this company takes care of their employees, the Bean families, and the environment. Made me appreciate their business model, and they had a tasty chocolate chip cookie. My favorite Reese's are the Christmas tree ones. The peanut butter is just creamier and there's more of it. I need a mega stuffed version of Reese's Cups. All right, so now we have pumpkin, and now we have a Christmas tree. But as Len says, put those suckers in the freezer, please, first. Thanks, Trisha. That's an awesome piece of feedback. And finally, Dennis, my good friend down in Texas. I love shopping for school supplies. I remember the back to school section at the Target on Manchester Road in Baldwin. Been there many times. Dennis, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live right across the street, right by the ballpark. It would be full of stacks of paper, bins of pencils and pens, folders, and large boxes of crayons. I remember thinking how I was always so inspired to go back to school by all that stuff. I loved the Trapper Keeper at the beginning of the school year, but by the end, all the folders were falling apart from being overstuffed with paper. The Velcro had worn out from constant opening and closing, and the binding area was always fraying. Good point. Those things were destroyed by the end of the year. By May, they were done. This past Christmas, my wife got me a collection of socks with Return of the Jedi designs on them. The brand is called Stance. The socks came in a metal Return of the Jedi lunchbox, complete with a classic-looking thermos inside. I don't have much use for the lunchbox right now, so I filled it up with some knickknacks. It made me feel nostalgic. Socks in a metal lunchbox? They know their audience, Dennis. That is awesome. And the force is strong with Dennis Keithley. Thanks, Dennis. And thank you, everybody. So leave your feedback, patreon.com/BRGS podcast. You have any feedback about back to school supplies? It's not too late. I want to share it still again next week, patreon.com/BRGS podcast. All right, a little bit more serious today on the topic because yesterday was September 11th. And it was 22 years ago that the September 11th attacks happened, obviously in New York City and in Pennsylvania. And I will be honest, this show's called Mike in the Midwest. And you guys, I'm always honest and I share everything about my life on the big show on BRGS podcast and here. I'm a sentimental guy. I mean, I tear up when I watch movies and I watch like a sporting event when I see like Adam Wainwright, when it's his last game, I'll cry. I mean, he's my favorite Cardinal of all time. When I saw Albert Pujols play his last game, Yadier Molina last year, I cried. I mean, my girls make fun of me because I'm emotional. Sports get me emotional. Movies get me emotional. Field of Dreams comes on every time. Dude, I'm a blubbering mess. The Natural, Remember the Titans, I'm a mess. Apollo 13, I cry. I that's just me. So obviously real life stuff gets me super emotional like September 11th. And so everybody has their, where were you when something happened? And that, so I think for my generation, I think a lot of us are kind of from the same generation that just gave the feedback. You know, the first thing I remember was like Challenger happening in 1986. And I was sitting in class watching that happen. And that kind of inspired me to become a teacher because we were watching, I think, because of Krista McAuliffe, who was going to teach science lessons from class or from space. And later in life, I was blessed to get to meet Krista's mother at space camp 2 summers. I got to be her personal, like, chaperone as she visited space camp teachers. I picked her up from the airport. I drove her over to space camp. I took her to her hotel. Both summers I was there. I got to really know her and just as her, like, escort. But she was such a sweet lady. Her name was Grace Corrigan. And it's like, it's one of those things like how I never knew that I would meet Krista's mom later in life. And she was such a sweet lady. And she really kind of, she inspired me because she's like, Mike, she told me one time, she goes, you must be an awesome teacher because, I told her that your daughter was one of the reasons I am a teacher. She goes, that's so cool to me. I'm like, no, it's so cool that she inspired so many, it's not just me. It was probably thousands of, me's. And and the fact that Grace came all the way to Huntsville, Alabama from the Northeast to inspire more teachers. She's such a cool lady because she was tiny and frail, but a little spark plug, and it was just cool. So that's kind of a side note, like the show always is. But September 11th, of course, I'm going through Twitter and social media, and you're seeing all the images, and it's bringing back all those sad days. I just remember that day. Everybody wants to tell their story. And, I was teaching at Wedgwood Elementary, that year, and I was 27 years old. I was in my 3rd year of teaching 6th grade. So I didn't know what I was doing. When you become a teacher, you really don't know what you're doing. I mean, I'll be honest. I was kind of figuring it out. Pam, my wife, was teaching next door. We were not married at the time, obviously. But we were really good friends. My whole team were really good friends. We had 4 6th grade teachers and we had 4 5th grade teachers. And there were 8 of us in this end of the school. We called it Pod D because our school was broken into pods, and it was 5th and 6th grade. There were 4 5th grades, 4 6th grades. And we were really good friends, especially 2 of the 5th grade teachers. Dave was in our wedding. He's a 5th grade teacher. Beth was Pam's best friend at the time. She was a 5th grade teacher. And then Pam and I, really, like, us 4 were just like tight as thieves. So anyway, I'm driving to school, and my house was in the subdivision where the school was. I lived literally 2 minutes from the school, but to drive to school, it took me about 5 minutes because I actually had to go through the subdivision out to the main road and then go up like one exit and then come back just so I had my vehicle at the school in case I wanted to drive to get some lunch or something at like a Subway or Lee's Chicken or something. But I could walk to school, but I always drove I had a pickup truck at that time. No, I had my Jeep at that time. I had my first Jeep. Anyway, I've talked about this. I'm a news kind of junkie. So I had my radio on KMOX, which is our local news sports station, talk station. I had it on just like any other morning. I believe it was a Tuesday morning, and it was in St. Louis. It was a beautiful day. I mean, it's just like today, blue sky, perfect day, and it was just normal day. And I'm driving in, and you hear this report of a small plane hits a building in New York, and of course I'm detached from it because I'm in the Midwest. I'm in North St. Louis County. I couldn't be farther away from New York City and the big hustle and bustle of the big city. So, but I mean, I'm a news junkie, so I want to know what happened. And so I hear that happen. And instead of when I park my Jeep because I'd usually just park my Jeep and go in the back door and go straight into my classroom because there's a door into the school right next to my classroom. I went into the office because there was a TV. We had TVs in our classroom, but I went into the office just to get my mail out of the mailbox in the office and see what was going on. And that's when we first started seeing the reports that this wasn't a small plane. I figured it was like a Cessna or some light plane that some amateur pilot was learning how to fly, didn't know what was going on, and accident. And then we found out what was unfolding with the first plane. And it just my stomach, it was horrible. And you didn't know immediately that it was an attack. I'm an optimistic person. I mean, I think you've learned that over the last 15 years. Like, God, what a horrible accident. Because I was scared to fly as it was. And like this plane, like what happened? Did the radar go wrong? Did the pilots make a mistake? What could have happened? Was it landing and the took it, some kind of a systems error? The radar brought it into the building instead of to the airport. What kind of error could have caused this mistake? I kept thinking mistake, mistake, mistake. And the other thing was at the time, my sister and her husband were both pilots for American Airlines, and they were in the air at the time. And I'm not close with my sister or my mom or her husband, but I knew they were in the air and I knew they were flying somewhere and I knew they always flew around that corridor. So I didn't know where they were. And so you don't think that's them, but you don't know, right? And then of course that day as the events unfolded, I have no idea where they are. And so, you wonder like, are they okay? Because they're up in the air and they're on American Airlines flights, and so you're worried about that. She was totally fine. She was flying out west that day, so totally not a problem. But I never kept track of where my sister was. I just knew she was flying that day. But here's the thing: is that once it became evident what happened, that this was a terrorist attack and the horrific stuff that was happening in New York City, was that this was happening right as school was starting for us in the central time zone. We had my class came in at like 8:45 and we had morning work until about 9:15. And then my class went away to specials from like 9:15 to 10:15. They had music and PE. So they left. And so did Pam's class. So Pam and I had it was our planning period early in the day that day. So we had this hour where we didn't have kids so we could watch the coverage on TV. So we did. We watched. It was obviously it was on every channel. And we knew what was happening. But then the thing was, Pam immediately wanted to run to get Paige. Because Paige at this time, who's 27 right now, was 4 or 5. And she was right down the road, about 2 miles down at the church daycare center. And of course, everybody wants to go get their kids when there's uncertainty, right? And I kept telling her she's safe there. She's safe, that the daycare is going to take care of those kids. She's going to be there. We have to be there. We have to be here for our kids. Like we have to be here for our kids, and they're going to take care of her. And we were really good friends with people who ran the church daycare. They're good people. And so the thing was, Pam and I were 27 years old at this time. And we saw what happened on the TV and we were freaked out. I mean, so were all the teachers across the country, right? And so were everybody. I mean, every citizen was. This was not special. But what happened that day was all of a sudden at 10:15, the bell rings. Our kids come back in from PE where they were probably playing kickball or soccer or something out on the field, and they know something's wrong because they can see all the teachers are just shook. They can tell. And so you have to go on with your day, and you can't have the news on because you can't shake the kids up. I want to watch the news. I'm a news junkie. I got to know what's going on, but I can't have that on. Remember, this is 2001. You don't have an iPhone, you don't have Twitter, you don't have anything like that in your pocket like you would nowadays, probably for the best. So you just disconnect, but you do tell them that there is something happening, but you don't have details, and you'll figure it out at the end of the day. You'll let them know that they're safe. But the thing is that on that day, you had to become the surrogate parent and let your kids know, because I had 27 students that day looking at me, uncertain of what was going to happen. And parents did throughout the day pick up their kids. It was a really weird day because kids would disappear, be like, Mr. Rallman, Katie's mom's picking them up right now. And go ahead. No homework today. Just go. And, kids were just going home, and I got it because I wanted to, you wanted to get your kids. That's the most, family's always first. But, and then, of course, some parents didn't come get their kids, and those are the kids you really had to love on. But the thing was, you were never trained for something like this, and nobody is. The firemen that were the heroes that climbed the towers. They weren't trained for something like that, but they did it. They stepped up, and not that I, did anything, but I just remember that day I had no answers, no answers, and it was a horrible day. And I just remember how I just wanted to give answers to my kids, and I didn't have answers. That's such a hard day, but I just wanted to let them know that they were going to be okay. It was a hard day. We didn't know what was going to happen and how the world changed for them. And the ironic thing is, those kids are now 30. A lot of those kids about 27, 30 years old at this point. I know some of them have children. I've seen a lot of that. Because I keep up with them, a lot of them on Facebook. I know one's an Air Force pilot, one's a teacher. A lot of them are chefs. I'm so proud of those kids and then that class. But man, what a day, and you kind of step up and you hope for the best. But man, their world changed that day. But as teachers, we didn't know what to do. And like the world didn't know what to do. Everybody in their role didn't know what to do, but we did the best we could. And I just remember also that day after school, this is such an exhausting day, right? For all of us. My grandfather, who is my hero, was in hospice. He was back at the house, at his house. My grandpa passed away the next Tuesday on September 18th, but they sent him home. And I just remember I sat over at his house every day after school for that week following. And of course, you keep the TV on to see the news. And that was like the longest week between September 11th and September 18th when my grandpa passed away. He was on really strong painkillers and stuff. So I don't think my grandpa ever knew that this happened, but it was just such a bad time, but then you saw the good that came out of it too, how the patriotism, how people loved on each other. Everybody helped each other out. There was so much good that came out of the bad. But it's one of those things that you don't know what you got inside until you're forced to figure it out. And I hope that stuff never happens again. I hope it never happens again. But it's one of those things that makes you reflect every year that it's really, really rough when stuff like this happens. And, I prayed so hard for people that lost loved ones. I can't imagine the hurt. And the hurt never ends. And I still pray for people that lost loved ones. That's got to be horrible. But, I just pray that they have peace. And I pray that something like that doesn't happen again. But heroes were born that day. And, I really don't know where I'm going with this, but that's kind of my story as to where I was. You're never taught what to do. But I was standing there in front of that class, and I did the best I could to explain it, to my 27, 12-year-olds, they're going to be okay. Something bad happened, far away from us. We're miles away from New York City, but we're all Americans. Those people that it happened to are just like us. We're just like New Yorkers. We might not talk the same. We might root for different baseball teams. But we all have the same blood. We're all brothers and sisters. and we're all going to support each other, and we're all going to share in this pain, but we're all going to be okay in the long run. We're going to be okay. You're going to be safe. But it's hard to tell that to 12-year-olds, because you don't want to get them scared. But as a teacher, you got to figure that stuff out on the fly. And it was a hard day. But I'd kind of like, I know it's really hard to give feedback on this, like in a paragraph. But where were you, and what's your brief story for that day? And how did you figure it out? What was your role? And I know it's kind of a downer, but I think it is good to have reflection and how Americans everywhere kind of stepped up and in your role. Not that I stepped up, but at least I tried to do the best I could to take care of those 12, my sixth graders. I just wanted them to feel safe. That's the only thing I could do. I just wanted them to feel safe and that they knew they're going to be okay. That's the best I could do. So sorry, it's kind of a downer, but it's Mike in the Midwest. It's real, and we're a family. That's what we do. Sometimes it's trapper keepers, and I just hit you with a heavy one. Sorry about that, but I care about you guys very much, and it's always a safe place here, I think. All right, so let me know. Patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. We'll get back together again next Tuesday. Till then, take care of each other. Stay safe. Stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.